Greetings, and thank you for coming to our second reading in the midst of a pandemic. During this time, even though we can't get together as we do twice a month, we have still been writing. As you know, the group's writings come from prompts. That means that our reading this time is going to be a wonderful potpourri of writing from 7 members of the group. Some will read pieces from prompts given ahead of National Poetry Month, so you'll hear some poetry, because each of us was asked to respond to a particular poet. Others used a prompt given by the green sheet surrounding the activities of Earth Day. Some just found a favorite piece that they liked to share and to respond to because they wanted to have you hear what they love. Some responded to this time that we are in together right now in the pandemic, a prompt that we certainly never expected to get. So we're glad you're here, and we're glad that you will hear the writers of East Castle Writers Group. And our first reader will be Janice Collins.
My prompt for this piece was a memorable trip, and the title is A Chance Encounter. What power is it that causes people to meet at a precise and unplanned moment for good or for misfortune? Is the coincidence guided by God's hand, led by a guardian angel, or even the devil? Perhaps it is ruled by fate or just dumb luck. I wondered about chance meetings, especially when one happened to myself and my friend Bob one summer. We were cruising along on his motorcycle, 17 miles out of Winnemucca, Nevada, according to the sign we had just passed, when the reassuring rumble of the motor suddenly ceased, and we coasted to a soft and silent stop. The motor refused to restart. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere, hot and hopeless, surrounded by nothing but tumbling tumbleweed. We put our helmets on the edge of the road as a sign of distress, hoping that their bright orange color would attract attention and somehow bring us help. Our journey had begun 2 weeks earlier in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and had taken us through the Canadian mountains, along the rock-strewn coast of Oregon, and over the hills of San Francisco to our destination, the annual gathering of BMW motorcycle riders in the desert of Prineville, Oregon. We had traveled almost 4,000 miles with nary a mishap. Now, here we were, marooned, thankfully unhurt, but unhappily in trouble. How could we continue? Were we safe? Where would we spend the night if it came to that? I said a silent prayer and dared to look at the barren land all around us for a spot where we might pitch our tent. A few concerned motorists stopped with kind offers of useless help. After some hours of hopeful waiting, there suddenly appeared 2 motorcycle riders who sped past us, stopped, turned around, and returned with welcome and unbelievable offers of help. We were surprised to see that one of the riders was a woman, but we were further astonished to discover that this couple was also from Milwaukee. What are the chances of meeting someone from home, so far from home? How did it happen that we were all on that road at the same time? It was as if these two riders had been sent to find us. What luck! I will gratefully accept any explanation. But back to our problem. Inspection revealed that a new wire on our motorcycle motor had merely vibrated loose and was easily fixed. Another piece of fantastic good fortune. Soon we were on our way with our new friends and rescuers, parting at Salt Lake City with an invitation to their approaching wedding and a chance to meet them again, this time at home in Milwaukee. And our next reader will be Margaret Berg.
I'm doing a reading by Mary Oliver, She was born in a small town in Ohio. Mary published her first book of poetry in 1963 at the age of 28. And she received numerous awards over the course of her long career. But it was her fourth book, American Primitive, that won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 1984 for her. Oliver is our most precious writer of the physical landscape. She opens our eyes to the nature within. It's wild and it's quiet. And I've chosen a simple poem from her book, 1,000 Mornings. Oliver is patient in her observations to the teachings that contained in the smallest moments. And I'd like to read for you the poem, Lines Written in the Days of Growing Darkness by Mary Oliver. Every year we have been witness to it, how the world descends into a rich mash in order that it may resume. And therefore, who would cry out to the petals on the ground to stay, knowing as we must, how the vivacity of what was is married to the vitality of what will be. I don't say it's easy, but what else will do if the love one claims for the world be true? So let us go on cheerfully, though, this in every crisping day. Though the sun be swinging east, the ponds be cold and black, and the sweets of the year be doomed. The poet is saying that, like nature, the world naturally goes through down times, just so it can rise again. A quote from the poem I was drawn to was how the vivacity of what was is married to the vitality of what will be. As in nature, the leaves die in the fall, but in the springtime, there is new life and buds on the trees. Our life on earth may be difficult with many changes, but the poem challenges us to still go on cheerfully. The title of her poem, Lines Written in the Days of Growing Darkness, reminded me of the condition of our world today. Truly, our nation is going through a difficult time. People are ill, and many people are dying. As the world is fighting to save lives, we have to believe that our nation will come through this pandemic even stronger. It won't be easy, but by working together, we can make it happen if we truly love our world. I'd like to read for you now a poem I wrote inspired by this author. Sun, it's called Signs of Spring. Sun raised through windows drew me to my balcony. I breathed the air deeply, letting it fill my lungs. The robins were hopping on the ground beneath me, then flying off to the budding bushes of spring. I observed joggers running and a faithful dog walker. Then a bus broke the silence and a speeding car passed. This marvelous sunshine took me out of my dwelling and lifted my spirits, a special gift that nature can bring. The virus may control us, but spring is upon us. The grass now is greener, the sunshine is warmer, and the birds are out singing. We too must join in. Thank you. Oh, and now we have Katie. Katie Phillips.
When I first just was wondering what I should read, I had chosen the prompt that was given in the green sheet about the place that you loved most in the world. And I wrote about Door County. As you see, I came up with something different. During this time of pandemic, I think one of my favorite places, the place that means the most to me right now, is the world I see right outside my window. My first poem. My prayer flags are flying again, and I am glad. Several days ago, those small pieces of silk were limp, soggy with rain, twisted around the railings of my balcony overlooking the street. And I thought to bring them inside, dry them out, tie them to my bookshelf or across the ceiling where they would be safe, but didn't. No one in Tibet would even consider such folly, trusting as they do in what the small flags mean and do. So I did nothing and went to bed, heard the rain against the window, talked to my husband about the day, picture all of us safe at home. Then slept all night, only to wake in the morning to see the flags fluttering free, catching every breeze. The multicolored pieces of cloth doing what they were meant to do, what we will them to do, saying without words what I cannot find words to say and cannot do now. Bring physical comfort to a world sick and weary and sad. So I watched the flags dangling and tangling in the breeze, and attached to them prayers I've said for years, still not knowing exactly how they work, but knowing that despite this physical spacing, I am still attached to this body-sick, heart-sick world. Then, one morning after days of wind and rain, I stood on my 4th floor balcony and noticed across the way the ex-coach enjoying the sun. Bare-chested and wearing sunglasses against the glare, he did knee bends and stretches as though in a gym, while below, on ground level, a man and wife came outside to admire their star magnolia in full bloom, white blossoms floating on every bare branch. He started taking pictures while she sat, eyes closed, relaxing. I called out to them and they looked up. The ex-coach looked down, then over, and just like that, we were engaged in a 3-way long-distance shouting conversation. I called up hand to ear that we needed a tin can and string, the kind of phone we made when kids in time of need, like the polio epidemic when we couldn't leave the yard for weeks in the summer. I shouted out, "We're like the Goldbergs," remembering how Molly kept in touch with neighbors by leaning her head out the window and shouting the news for all to hear. I can still see those clotheslines stretched from one tenement window to the other. Laundry dangling, but sometimes words, then and now, reaching across empty space. Now I look out the window and it is definitely May, and the fruit trees are starting to bud and the grass is beautifully green. And I wish to go a-maying. I don't have a basket of blooms to hang on the door, or a handful of colored ribbons meant for the maypole, and certainly no crown for the Queen of May. But my calendar says it's May Day, and in a book I read, that is the time to rise early, find a patch of grass sparkling with dew, and wash my face in the drops, known to hold the promise of beauty. Which sounds tempting, since I have not had a haircut for months, wear clothes winter weary, and this morning found my lipstick running on empty. It might not be a perfect solution, but dewdrops at dawn sound perfect to me. Thank you. And now, Marian Fraley.
Good afternoon. I chose to read some of the works of Robert Frost, and in particular one poem called Our Hold on the Planet. During our COVID-19 hiatus, I chose to spend some time with Robert Frost, one of America's most celebrated poets. I love the rhythm and the feeling in his poetry. During high school and college, I had just enough exposure to know that I'd barely scratched the surface. So what better time than now to explore his poetry more deeply? As I skimmed through the volume of his collected works, a poem titled Our Hold on the Planet caught my attention, more so because I was reading it for the first time while in the midst of also preparing a presentation for Earth Day 2020. Frost starts the poem by contrasting vivid images of violently destructive summer storms
was a lovely description of gentle, nurturing summer rains. He then acknowledges that there is indeed much in nature that's against us, feeding doubt whether we have our fair share of the good. But he reminds us to, quote, take nature all together since time began, including human nature, in peace and war. He then concludes that on balance, again quoting, nature must be a little more in favor of man, or our numbers living wouldn't so steadily be more. Our hold on the planet wouldn't have so increased. To me, this message felt out of step. The last two lines unsettled me. Did I misunderstand? Was Frost equating population growth and our hold on the planet with good? Would he pen that same ending today? I cannot answer that question, but I have finally come to appreciate that he lived and wrote in a different time. In the 68 years from his birth in 1874 to 1942, when this poem was published, his world had been visited by some truly horrific storms, both man-made and natural. The Peshtigo fire, the Johnstown flood, Galveston hurricane, San Francisco earthquake, the influenza pandemic of 1919, 2 world wars, 2 great migrations, an emergence of the KKK, prohibition, speakeasies, and mobs, the Great Drought in the Great Plains, the choking Dust Bowl, and the Great Depression. World War II was still going on when this poem was published in 1942. The environmental movement didn't begin until Rachel Carson's Silent Spring was published in 1962, 20 years after this poem and only months before Frost died. The first Earth Day wasn't until 1970. Today's problems of climate change, raging heat waves and wildfires, tsunamis, earthquakes, hurricanes, and floods are compounded by political conflict, famine, poverty, wars, pollution, exploitation of natural resources, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Continuing population growth and our hold on the planet now seem less a blessing than a threat to nature. Maybe Mr. Frost was right to end his poem as he did in 1942. And maybe, if we're lucky enough and careful enough, time will prove it to be appropriate to us as well. I wonder. And now I'd like to read you the poem, Our Hold on the Planet. We asked for rain. It didn't flash anymore. It didn't lose its temper at our demand and blow a gale. It didn't misunderstand and give us more than our spokesman bargained for. And just because we owned to a wish for rain, send us a flood and bid us be damned and drowned. It gently threw us a glittering shower down. And when we had taken that into the roots of grain, it threw us another, and then another still, till the spongy soil again was natal wet. We may doubt the just proportion of good to ill. There is much in nature against us, but we forget. Take nature all together since time began, including human nature in peace and war. And it must be a little more in favor of man, say a fraction of 1% at the very least, or our number living wouldn't be steadily more. Our hold on the planet wouldn't have so increased. Thank you. And now we're going to hear from Harriet.
My writing is entitled Two Sides to the Coin, and I am responding from a quote that I found in my little tiny collection of quotes that's been with me for many years. My quote is, "Loneliness is the pain of being alone. Solitude is the glory of being alone. Loneliness is an empty feeling. It is a feeling that something or someone is missing. Our normal life is interrupted when someone we see every day leaves for an extended time, whether they leave on a long vacation or they move away to a new area. The one left behind feels a loss. Sure, we have telephones, we have email, so we can keep in touch and even see each other's image when we talk. But there is that missing presence of a warm human being that we find painful. Change in a routine, changing location, change of scenery is sometimes very painful when you are alone. But then again, sometimes being alone is a blessing. You have your thoughts to yourself. There's no one hurrying you along, no one bending your ear with their personal problems. We all need quiet times. We need that glorious solitude, sometimes to balance out the hectic schedules we commit ourselves to. Solitude in our world is a rare commodity. There are always people around, always cars zooming by, horns and sirens interrupting our thoughts. The only way to get solitude is to escape to a quieter area, escape to the glory of being alone.
And we get to Terry Sundberg.
I'm Terry, and this prompt came from the green sheet for celebrating Earth Day 2020. It's titled Fruit of the Earth. When I was 9 or 10, I remember a particular visit to my aunt and uncle in the city. It was early spring, it was still cold, and some mornings even the ground would be covered with frost. Whenever we came for a visit, no matter if we dropped in unexpectedly, Aunt May always insisted we have a meal. She had a gift for making something out of nothing, it seemed. This day she sent Uncle Lester out to the backyard to bring her some carrots. I went with him because I wanted to find out how he was going to get those carrots out of the ground. But he didn't go to his garden. Instead, we went into the garage by the alley. There, in a deep bin covered with straw, he pawed through the sand until he found the number of carrots Aunt May wanted. However, there weren't only carrots in that bin. There were parsnips, beets, turnips, and potatoes. That was how Uncle Lester kept his vegetables fresh throughout the winter months. I was amazed. I hadn't seen garden fresh vegetables stored like that before. In the summer, I had pulled fresh carrots out of the ground, wiped the dirt off their smooth skins onto my jeans, and then I could smell and savor the tangy sweetness of the earth. These were the chunky babies with their tousled tops that looked like a girl wearing a feathery hat. Nothing like the milled carrots sold in plastic bags that they tout as baby carrots today. These were sweet and crispy and tasted like a summer breeze. Is there anything more beautiful than a bunch of sturdy carrots banded together like an autumn bouquet? And now they even come in more colors than brilliant orange. You can find red, purple, and yellow in the mix. How lovely they look on the platter when roasted together with a little olive oil. That's the thing about carrots. There are so many different ways to eat them. Raw sticks as a snack, or as an appetizer with ranch dressing. Grated or curled ringlets in a salad. Cooked with broth and pureed into a creamy soup with a bit of ginger. Candied with brown sugar and butter. Sliced up in a stir-fry or chunked up in a warm stew. The mirepoix, that is a delicious base for so many sauces, wouldn't be a mirepoix without carrots. With carrots in your refrigerator, life will be as beautiful as a sunset. Our next reader is David Tolan. He's prepared a background about the two poets that had competed in a competition, and a background of what their poem is about. Ozymandias is the title of two related sonnets published in 1818. The first was written by the English Romantic poet Percy Shelley. And was published in the 11th of January 1818 issue of the Examiner of London. The poem was included the following year in Shelley's collection, Rosalind and Helen, a Modern Eclogue, with other poems, and in a posthumous compilation of his poems published in 1826. Shelley's most famous work, Ozymandias, is frequently anthologized. Shelley wrote the poem in friendly competition with his friend and fellow poet Horace Smith, who also wrote a sonnet on the same topic with the same title. Smith's poem was published in the Examiner 3 weeks after Shelley's on February 1st, 1818. Both poems explore the fate of history and the ravages of time. Even the greatest men of the empires they forged are impermanent. Their legacies faded to decay into oblivion. In antiquity, Ozymandias was a Greek name for the Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II. Shelley began writing his poem in 1817, soon after the British Museum's announcements that they had acquired a large fragment of the statue of Ramesses II from the 13th century BC. Some scholars believe Shelley was inspired by the acquisition. The 7 1/4 short ton fragment of the statue's head and torso had been removed in 1816 from the mortuary temple of Ramesses at Thebes by the Italian adventurer Giovanni Battista Belzoni. It had been expected to arrive in London in 1818, but did not arrive until 1821. David's going to recite the poem of Shelley, and I'll come back and we'll compare Shelley's poem with Smith's.
Thank you, Terry. It's hard to imagine at this time, with the virus bringing our country to a halt, that at the time that this poem was written, Napoleon had been out of power for just 3 years. Had not died, he was still in the South Atlantic, and people were feeling, what is going on, what's going to happen? Shelley and Smith saw the story of these remnants of Ramesses, and they said, let's write a sonnet. Okay, I'll write a sonnet. Shelley's has lasted over time. Those of you who like to read stories of adventure might remember The Hunt for Red October. A selection of that poem is in there. Charles Krauthammer included it in his most recent, and his very last book. So here we have Ozymandias. I met a traveler from an antique land who said 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, a shattered visage lies, whose brow and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command show that the sculptor well these passions felt, which yet survive stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked him, the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appeared: I am Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty in despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the ruin of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the desert stands stretched far away.
You've heard Shelley, now is Horace Smith's Ozymandias. In Egypt's sandy silence, all alone, stands a gigantic leg, which far off throws the only shadow that the desert knows. I am great Ozymandias, saith the stone, the King of Kings. This mighty city shows the wonders of my hand. The city's gone, naught but the leg remaining to disclose the site of this forgotten Babylon. We wonder, and some hunter may express wonder like ours, when through the wilderness where London stood, holding the wolf in chase, he meets some fragment huge and stops to guess what powerful but unrecorded race once dwelt in that annihilated place.
And that's our reading for today. And we thank you for being here, and we hope that the next time we're together, we'll have a chance to actually have an audience in front of you, writers in front of you, and the audience listening. And we'll all be glad that the pandemic is over and we can rejoice and celebrate together. So thank you for coming, thank you for listening, and be safe.